All right, it looks like it should be good to go, Jolly.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jolly Hatchett. This meeting is being called to order. This CPOC Commissioner meeting is hereby called to order at 6:07 p.m. I am the chair of the Citizens Police Oversight Commission, and I will facilitate this meeting. This is a public meeting of the Citizens Police Oversight Commissioners that was properly advertised pursuant to the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act. At this time, I will have roll call be taken. Jolly Hatchett, present. Roja Hussein, resigned. Benjamin Lerner, resigned. Hassan Bennett,
Present.
John Solomon,
Present.
Melanie DeBose.
She's on mute.
I will take notice that she is present, even though she may be on mute. Rosaura Thomas,
Present.
Hakeem P.A.
He just said he was gonna reconnect, so he might have.
Present, can't hear.
Okay, I'm not sure what the issue is, and I'm not sure if I skipped over, but Mariela Santiago also resigned. Hakeem, please let us know, put something in the chat if you continue to have audio issues. At this time, I'm just going to give a community colloquy update ahead of time. During the community colloquy, any members that speak will have 3 minutes to address the commissioners. Any documents or communications that might supplement their comments should be submitted ahead of time. And if not submitted ahead of time, please submit them now. I will keep the time and notify the board when 3 minutes have elapsed. The commissioners may choose not to comment, question, or respond in any way to your public comment. Just want to get that out there ahead of time. And before we actually get into the what's on the agenda, there's going to be some slight deviation from the agenda considering the developments that have taken place over the last 24 hours. And I just wanted to up first just discuss that. The past 24 hours have been pivotal in this commission's establishment and short history. While I acknowledge that the resignation of 3 commissioners given hours apart is concerning, just as concerning are the allegations made against myself and other commissioners. Many of those allegations we deny and we also dispute those. But as you might imagine, when non-advocates come together for the greater good of an organization, there will be disagreements. There will be disagreements, but they were done in a mature way, in a respectful manner. Although we've lost those commissioners, those of us that are still here, we remain dedicated to the mission of building a police oversight agency for the citizens of Philadelphia. To the staff, I ask you to remember that it's always darkest just before dawn, and the bigger the challenge, the closer we are to victory. We are also closer than ever to getting this organization where it needs to be and providing the services that the community voted for. In closing, we remain optimistic because success is not final, failure is not fatal, but it is the courage to continue that actually counts. And the commissioners of us that remain, we have the courage to continue to serve this agency and to serve the citizens. Thank you for being here with us. And again, we're going to go out of order. There is a general counsel selection update on the agenda. 2 of the commissioners that resigned were on that council, but there are 2 that remains. If either one of them are present, can put that information to us and let us know if you are ready to go forward.
I'm ready to go forward.
Okay, if you can just give us a brief recitation of the results of your search and whether or not you recommend an applicant, and if the remaining commissioners need to vote on that applicant.
Well, as John and I are the only ones that are left from the last meeting, we all agreed that it would be, and whenever you want me to mention a person's name, please share that with me, Chairman.
I believe we previously discussed in executive session. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Would you like me to update?
Yes, please.
I'll speak on the behalf of those that was a part of the General Counsel Hiring Committee. For those that don't know, it was former Commissioner and Vice Chair Afroza, former Commissioner Marielis, as well as Commissioner Rosario and myself was all part of the General Counsel Hiring Committee. For those that don't know about that process, we looked at about 40 plus applicants. Out of that 40+ applicants, we felt strong about 4 applicants. We then interviewed those 4 applicants exclusively. The general counsel exclusively interviewed those applicants. We then had a second round based on who we felt strongly about, which came down to 2 people. Those 2 people we eventually interviewed as well. And we felt strongly about one particular applicant. Out of the 2 interviewees, one applicant felt that they weren't no longer interested in the position. So we then reached out to the applicant that we felt strongly about, and we sent the invitation about the general counsel position, and the applicant accepted the position. So that's the only updates that I have on my end.
Okay, so with that, do any commissioners have any questions regarding that? Okay, and also with the understanding that this has previously been discussed in executive session, and now, and at that point, either John or Rosaura, do you have a motion regarding the selection and appointment of an applicant for general counsel?
A motion.
Okay, and what I take that to be is that there's a motion by what's left of the general counsel hiring committee to move forward and provide an offer to the applicant that has been selected by the committee, which you both were a part of. Anything to add to that, John or Rosaura?
No.
Okay. With that being the motion, can someone second that?
I second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
John?
Okay, now he's here.
Aye.
Elder
Okay.
Melanie?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. And if you said something previously, we did not hear you.
Yeah, I was talking my head off. I'm sorry.
Oh,
But
so,
yes, aye to that motion.
okay. That motion has passed unanimously. Thank you. Elder Melanie, I just want to go back since you mentioned that you were speaking. If there were anything that you wanted
No,
to say.
I was really just asking if I was being heard.
Okay.
And so I heard everything and I was doing a periodic check. So all is well. And thank you all for your consideration.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to pivot to Anthony for one moment. As I mentioned, we're going we're going out of order. Anthony, is there anyone that can give us a brief report on the training or event that went on in Las Vegas? Just want to hear about the success of it. We were very excited about it.
Oh, sure. I mean, it was well attended and well received. We tried to check to see if it was recorded by the agency, but by all accounts, it was a smashing success, and CPOC and PPD work was well received by all. So if at some point in the future, if the commissioners would like a presentation on what we did at the conference, we'd be happy to give one.
Any questions or comments from the commissioners on that issue? All right, hearing none. Are there any updates from HR, training, finance, community, or communications committees? I know that there have been meetings. If there are just any updates that can be provided. Hassan, you had a chance to meet with some committees, correct?
Yes, I did have a chance. I'm looking at my schedule.
Okay,
I can give you the right date. If you give me a second, please.
take your time.
Before the opportunity passes, I would acknowledge that I would like to hear an overview or summary of the presentation that was made in Las Vegas at some point. Am I muted again?
No, we hear you. I think.
Now we'll get
Anthony's-
right on that,
Okay.
Commissioner DeVos. We'll prepare something to
Okay.
present and we'll let you know as soon as we're ready and we'll schedule something for you all.
Thank you.
Hassan, you still looking?
Yes, I'm still looking, pardon me.
No, that's fine. Any other committee members who want to provide feedback or reports on the committee meetings,
I can give a update for the budget committee.
please?
So we did meet at the beginning of the month to have discussion. We did start to analyze the budget, just making sure that, you know, us as the board is aware of all salaries and any other expenses that was curated. So we are reviewing that currently. And then we will have a very detailed analysis on the budget and our thoughts as commissioners. Coming soon.
Thank you, Hakeem. Any fellow commissioners have any questions or comments as it relates to the budget committee or finance committee? All right, Hassan, do you want us to loop back to that maybe?
Yes, please. Am I open? Yes.
Well, and prior to moving on, I'll ask, are there any questions from the community that have been submitted ahead of time?
Yes, we had two people who requested to speak.
Okay,
The first one is Hans Benos.
I'm honored. Thank you, Danny. Should I go now?
Sure,
Okay.
Hans.
Hi, everybody. I'm Hans Benos. I'll spend introductions. I don't have a lot of time. I do want to say that obviously, like many folks, I'm very concerned about the state of CPOC. The coverage in the media, the resignations letters are very concerning, not only because of how much work has gone into this, both on my behalf as well as all of the staff, but really folks throughout the city who are invested in CPOC. So I have deep concerns about what's going on, deep concerns about many of the things that are alleged. Those are all in the ether. I don't think we need to address them or discuss them much today. We can all read the letters and read the coverage. But what I am seeing in that coverage and what I observed in the last meeting makes me uncomfortable. But I do have some other targeted questions. I recognize that there won't be an answer today, but I do think that these questions need to be answered so we can understand if this board is functioning the way it should be and if it's organized in the way that it should be. So one of my questions relates to the general use of the general process of hiring the ED. I'm recently told that many police officers, many former union members were interviewed by the CPOC board, despite the fact that, my understanding, that those people couldn't be hired because they're former union members and legislation doesn't allow that. I'm also told that this board wasn't aware of that fact. So I think that's a question that needs to be answered for the public. Was the board aware of the rules and did it waste a lot of time interviewing many police officers? I'm told as many as 4 were interviewed by the board to, and even though they can never be hired. So that's a question I have. Second question I want to highlight is, was there a budget ask made? If there was no budget ask made, why was there no budget ask made? And what was the role of the board in freezing the ask for a budget? The board, the CPOC is supposed to grow. It cannot grow unless it's allowed to make budget asks. And I'm told that there was no budget ask and that the board directed that. The second question I have is, was hiring frozen? Same principle here. If they don't spend all the money in the budget, this is in the letter, but I want to pull this apart a little bit. How can the CPOC grow and fulfill its mission if the board is actively stopping folks from being hired? So that's a question I have, if that is actually happening. Commissioner Hatchett, in your interview yesterday, you referenced that there are bylaws that allow for 6 members to run the CPOC. Are those bylaws available? I cannot find them, and I've asked, and no one seems to be able to provide them. So if you could provide the bylaws that you referenced in your interview yesterday at the media, that would be very, very helpful. And finally, as it relates to the CPOC, the commissioner's treatment and interaction with staff, has the CPOC received any training from the law department about the scope of the board, what the board's role is in making decisions? There was a request for a $3,000 budget, for instance, cap where commissioners weigh in on the granular spend around $3,000. And there's reports that folks stop by the office to provide direction. I'm wondering if there's a clear understanding about the operations of what the board does and does not do, and if there was training there. I recognize I'm out of time, but I do also want to quickly say I happened to have been in Vegas for the conference, and I can say that the CPOC staff that were present did an exceptional job, both in terms of their interaction with other members of the law enforcement community, but also in their presentation. I was really proud of them. Thought they did a wonderful job, and a few of those folks I met for the first time in Vegas. So those are my questions. I'll stop there, and I would appreciate an answer today if possible, but certainly an answer in the near future. Thank you.
Mr. Mendels, thank you for that. If you have those questions in writing, if you want to forward those to me, and to the extent that I can get back to you on those, I have no problem with doing that. The one thing about the bylaws, that's the one thing I is not my favorite in terms of talking to the media. I think some things are either taken out of context. So what I intended, if I did not mention, was that the legislation calls for 9 commissioners, and out of 9 commissioners, a quorum would be 5, and the quorum is also should have been referenced in the bylaws. The legislation says 9 commissioners, but our bylaws talks about a quorum, and the quorum would be 5. So that's where that comes from. The bylaws should be on the website. But Mr. Mendels, again, I have no problem with getting back to you to the extent that I can on those things. Thank you so much. Danny, what was the other question? I'm sorry, the other, or let me stop right there for a second. Are there any commissioners who want to weigh in? Okay, not hearing anything.
Chair, this is Commissioner DeBose. I really would like to just say this does warrant further discussion, but a number of blanket statements have been made and a number of assumptions have been made also without our having until now given the opportunity to respond. So I believe that this warrants a more lengthy discussion, but I will say that there was a pre-screening process for those applicants, and we were, to the best of our knowledge, following and adhering to the process according to the legislation. The legislation does have a caveat that I believe is ultimately loosely interpreted and should have a deeper dive with regard to the hiring and the budget freezes. That's the language that was used, but in fact, we have been persistently asking for information in a timely manner. And that information has not come to us in a timely manner. And our recourse at the time, this does warrant more discussion. Our recourse at the time was to say, just stop and wait a minute, because we need to understand, because the issue of accountability and transparency belongs to everyone under the CPOC umbrella. That goes for commissioners and staff. And my contention is we cannot give an account and we cannot be transparent about things that are not disclosed to us in a timely manner. So again, that warrants more discussion. And one thing that I will offer is that we have made no attempt to micromanage as much as we have attempted to seek understanding and to be understood.
Thank you, Commissioner DeBose. Any other comments from the commissioners? The only thing that I'll just add to the budget is the commissioners were provided with a budget where it wasn't a circumstance from my perspective where it said, well, we're for or against the budget. It was a situation where we wanted more understanding, because either the week before or the week after, we learned about the sheriff's office attempting to double salaries. And so we wanted to make sure that we were not headed in that direction. That is where why there wasn't an increase, rather. I'll put it like that. It wasn't where no money was requested. An increase was not requested for the budget, just because there was quite some time ago, a significant increase in the allocation of money. But as commissioners, we wanted to make sure that the money is being allocated appropriately and that individuals, and not saying that this was the case, but it was a concern, but that we were in a scenario where individuals were getting salaries that were 2 and 3 times individuals who were comparable to them in their respective fields. All right, Danny, were there the next person who signed up for comment?
There's 2 questions, 2 people who requested Melanie to be more specific, to give more specifics. I don't know if she wanted to respond to those first, or if you want me to go to the next speaker.
Well, when it says, I see that, can you give more specifics? I'm not quite sure what they're actually referring to when they ask to be more specific. So without that clarification, I mean, we'll take this time if they want to put something additional in the chat. But pending that, we can go to the next person.
So the next person I had that was Eric Thomas. If you want to unmute yourself and ask your questions.
Hi, my name is Eric Thomas, longtime resident of South Philly. I'm just a little confused. I wanted to circle back to the executive director question. I read in the KYW article that no one who has been in a police union can be considered for the executive director position, but there was a candidate. I believe KYW said it was Richard Rivera, who was in unionized district for 6 years, I believe it said. So is what the commission saying that you didn't know that was unclear in some way? Can you clarify?
So I never mentioned, and we'll get to that, the executive director search. I never mentioned anyone's name. You mentioned Richard Rivera. I'm not sure where that information came from or the source of that. What I will just say.
KYW.
Well, yeah, KYW, I'm sure had a source. So that's what I mean. I'm not sure where they got that information from. What I will just say in general with the process, yes, the legislation reads that it's like 3 prongs to it. And one of the prongs is none of the executive director cannot have been a member of a union, a police union. Which again, as kind of Elder Melanie alluded to, that there are different interpretations to that. But as part of that, I have actually met with the managing director's office during this process and gotten feedback from individuals that were familiar with the legislation and gotten their interpretation on it. However, even assuming that its broadest interpretation, on its face, there was no way for the commissioners or the hiring committee for the executive director to discern whether or not an individual actually held a position in a union. And that for me came from the fact that not all police departments are unionized police departments. So on its face, it could not be discernible. Mm-hmm. And then required a deeper dive. So on its face, if someone met the threshold of whatever the requirements were that were posted, then in other conditions and criteria, we would move them forward and would not be able to discern or dig deeper until we move forward in the process.
I have a follow-up to that. So it seems pretty important, the question of whether someone's been in a police union seems pretty pertinent to this committee's hiring and this committee's charge. So at no point was that question asked of candidates before they were interviewed? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
The question may have been asked, but again, it's a matter of interpretation. Were you in a police union ever? Are you actively engaged in a police union? And if I recall it properly, my fellow commissioners can assist in this, the answer was active in a police union at the point of the interview. The answer was no.
So it was that's of every candidate.
Yeah, to the candidates. And again, if that were, no, not if, in as much as another part of the slippery slope was, are you an officer? That was later discussed when we drilled down into the legislation, because we have been adhering to that legislation so as not to have come up with these mistakes or missteps. But ultimately, we felt that the pre-screening had been adequately done in conjunction with the expectations of the legislation. And we feel, even now, certainly I do, that we did our due diligence. And subsequently, this piece is being is being enlarged. And so
It just seems
again, that
a
takes
pretty
further
black and white
discussion.
issue. It seems
Mr.
to be
Thomas,
pretty black
Mr.
and white.
Thomas, I'm sorry. I will ask that you not interrupt another individual that's speaking. I also just want to let you know that the 3 minutes has elapsed. But if you want to finish your comment, I would certainly invite you to do so.
Oh, I appreciate it, and I apologize for interrupting. It just seems, you know, and there's the qualifications are sort of listed in the comments here. It seems like a pretty black and white issue, and I would just suggest that it seems like this is sort of step one for considering a candidate. And you know, as a member of a union myself, I sort of know whether I'm part of that union or not, or I have been, and I have the ability to disclose that, you know, when asked. So going forward, it seems like something the committee might want to ask more directly. Thank you for your time.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Thompson. Again, based on certain readings of the legislation in terms of being a member, there was questions or concerns in terms of, well, does being a member mean just being a member, which I think you alluded to, just I'm a police officer and dues come out, or does it mean holding a position, president, vice president, and so on? But I certainly appreciate your thoughts, your feedback, and your comments. And I think now is probably an appropriate time to just, there weren't any other questions submitted from the community, were there, Anthony?
You mean me, I think.
Sorry.
No,
I'm sorry, Danny.
there have been some in the chat, but no one else requested to speak beforehand. I don't know if there was any. It looks like there's a hand raised right now for a Kelson.
I see that. Before we move forward, do any commissioners have anything that they want to say at this point? All right. I think now is an appropriate time to give an update on the executive director search. What I will say is this search seems like it started forever ago, but it wasn't that long ago. We being myself, Hassan Bennett, Commissioner Elder Melanie DeVos, as well as Benjamin Lerner, we were on the committee to search for the executive director. We put the posting out. We received more than 60 responses and applications and started going through those. Making sure that those individuals matched up with the description, the job description, the requirements, as well as the legislation. We did that collectively as a group, all 4 of us, and I will represent that every step of the way we did that together. It took some time. This is a process that we started from scratch. We had to come up with the questions from scratch. We had to start the rubric from scratch. We had to decide how we were going to score individuals, how we were going to weigh different aspects of the scoring, and so forth and so on, and experience. We then finally got to the point where we were able to conduct interviews. After the interviews were conducted, we actually met on, I believe it was May 9th, and went through and scored all of the applicants. At that point in time, it was our hope and our goal that when we met tonight, we would have been having a discussion and moving forward and proposing a recommendation for the executive director. However, as you know, 2 things have happened since then, actually within the past 24 hours. One of the individuals who was involved with the actual search has resigned. The other thing that has occurred is the process has been called into question by those individuals, which I believe includes Benjamin Lerner. Based on that, I have since, over the past 24 hours, I've met, talked to, discussed, spoke with a number of individuals, which includes all of the commissioners present. We think that at this point, the prudent thing to do would be to do away with that search and that process and have all commissioners at this point move forward and start the process over so that all of us are involved in the process. And it's not one group or another group, but all commissioners present to move forward in that search and start a new search.
I second.
I'm just trying to see, I know if there's any if there are any commissioners that want to weigh in or say anything, please feel do. But I know that there are probably questions or comments and everything like that. So now, Danny said that there was someone who had a hand raised.
We did, the hand got lowered. I think it was somebody named Kelly or Kelson. I don't know if you wanted to, yep, there they are. Kelson, sorry. My apologies.
Yes, sorry. Sorry about that. I did want to ask, just pretty straightforward. I guess during the process of the search for the executive director, were staff consulted at any point?
No. None other than the no.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't think there were any other hands raised, Charlie. There have been some questions in the chat. I don't know if you've been following them.
It's a little bit hard. I'll try to the extent that I can.
I know that there was one question at the beginning from a Travis that asked about the budget again. It said, I saw the Inquirer, it said you didn't ask for more budget. Why did you do that? How do you expect the agency to grow without more funding? Which I think was a question Hans had asked.
Right. And, you know, as we mentioned, we do want the agency to grow. The intent is for the agency to grow. We just wanted to make sure that all of the money that was being allocated as is was properly being allocated and being put to best use for the organization. And in order for the organization to grow, we expect that the organization will grow at a rapid rate. And then we'll definitely, I mean, we're doing things like sending individuals to Vegas. We'll be doing much more trainings and different audits and things like that. So I expect that the organization will grow very rapidly, and that will justify an increase in a budget ask.
It looks like there's a hand raised from a Maggie Hart.
Hi, yeah, I was hoping to ask a question. Is now an appropriate time to do that?
Hi, can I call you Miss Hart?
Yep.
Hi, Miss Hart, ask away. I want to start the clock.
Great. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I first want to thank you for the work that you do. I am attending tonight's meeting as a concerned community member, as well as a former city council staffer who believes deeply in the mission of an effective, fully staffed and democratic CPOC. I'm also attending because I have some concerns about the issues that were raised in the articles in the Inquirer and KYW over the past 24 hours. One thing in particular that I wanted to ask the CPOC about is related to the treatment of staff. And some attendees of the meeting have already laid out some of my concerns about the executive director search. But I wanted to focus on the treatment of staff, specifically. The KYW article mentions members of the public verbally harassing CPOC staff. And as I understand it, the commissioners took the women's side over the staff in a public meeting. The Inquirer article also mentions some mistreatment of staff, that they were asked to submit their resumes to the commissioners within the last month, which, as I understand it, is an HR function that the legislation reserves for the executive director of the CPOC. So my questions for the commissioners are really about the treatment and interactions with staff. Why did you all persist in asking staff for resumes and question their salaries and silence the then vice chair when she pointed out how inappropriate that was? And what role do commissioners believe that staff play, or that the commissioners play in hiring and firing staff? And how do they see those relationships moving forward?
So, Ms. Hart, I'm going to apologize. You said a lot. There were a lot of questions in there. If I can maybe take it from reverse order. As far as the staff, I see my role as chair, and all of the other commissioners, I think, would agree in terms of similar to a board of governors, where we work with whomever is in charge, provide guidance, and provide the way that we think that the organization should go. I mean, we all know that this is an organization that the city of Philadelphia at large voted for. And as commissioners who represent the city in different sectors, we want to make sure that the voices of those sectors are carried through in the organization. And so as part of that, I typically work with Anthony as the individual who's in charge of the staff and leave it to him to conduct the day-to-day management of the staff. In my experience with other boards, that's normally how it goes. Although I know the legislation does provide commissioners with some authority to do some things. But that was an allegation. I mean, almost all of the allegations surprised me and caught me off guard. I'm not sure where they came from. So that's for the most part been my experience with the staff, other than seeing them at the police, civilian police academy, or out in meetings in the community. And all of those interactions with me have been pleasant. So I'm not quite sure, other than the blanket assertion that there have been attempts to bully the staff. I'm not quite sure where that actually came from. And for the most part, we've been operating to deal with Anthony to do things. And that kind of leads to the next thing. As we mentioned earlier or previously, we established an HR committee, HR and training committees. And since CPOC is an independent agency and doesn't have an HR, if it were under the city, they would have the main HR that would deal with individuals. And CPOC, as it is, doesn't have an HR individual that's hired to handle HR issues, amongst other things. And so the thought process from the commissioners was in order, and this is at the same time that the budget issues were coming up, were to look into, and you said persist. I would push back a little bit that there wasn't persistence. And even with that notion, we went to Anthony, or I, on behalf of the commission, went to Anthony. I said, hey, Anthony, can you have the staff forward their resumes to us? Anthony responded. And I think everyone knows at this point in time that the staff, they declined, and that was the end of it. There was only one ask, unless something happened that I'm not aware of. There was only one ask for resumes. They declined, and we moved forward. But that request was just as part of the overall HR and budget committees trying to move forward. And also, just not to be forgotten, but there are some awesome people that work on the staff. And when we're out and about and we're asked about what has CPOC accomplished, CPOC has hired people. What did they do? For instance, we would love to go out and say, Jameson has been a detective and he's investigated this, that, and the other. And so that was one of the other motivating factors behind requesting the resume, so that we're just as well as informed as the executive director. The last thing I'll say, I'm sorry, is in terms of hiring and firing. We are very clear on the legislation. And one of the reasons why we're here is to make sure that we stay within the confines of the legislation. We have to, and if we don't, it's illegal in that it's illegal. And so my understanding is that the staff has already been there. The staff can only be hired or fired at the discretion of the executive director. I don't know where it comes from that there was an attempt or effort to fire the staff. I'm not sure where it came from in terms of any attempts or efforts to bully the staff. I will hope that that hasn't happened and doesn't happen. The last thing, only because it references me, was with the woman. I will push back on the notion that, because I saw it out there, the notion that the individual who came forward with the complaint, anyone took their side as opposed to the staff side. And I think that the commission as a whole decided, in order to avoid any appearance of impropriety, we're going to send that to the Inspector General's office to look at and do anything and everything that they needed to do so that there would not be any appearance of propriety. I think the only thing that I said was thank you for bringing this to our attention, or thank you for coming forward. And I would hope that that would not have been perceived as taking anyone's side.
Thank you for that thorough explanation. Can I just ask one quick follow-up?
There are a number of people who have their hands. You can ask the follow-up, but I can't promise an answer.
I wanted to ask a clarifying question. So you were saying that the resumes of staff were requested so that commissioners could better understand their accomplishments, and it did not have to do with any desire to hire or fire staff members.
No, we don't have, no, we don't have the authority to hire or fire staff members. We only have the authority to hire general counsel and executive director based on the legislation.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
Danny, if you can help me out. I know there's a number.
Yeah, there's no worries. That's my job. Citizen 1 is the next person I have that's hand raised. If you want to unmute yourself.
Hello, Citizen 1.
Hello. I don't want to sound like I'm yelling, and I'm going to speak very quickly just to make some clarities here for anybody who is wondering. A few years ago, I was in the hospital under anesthesia. Somebody took me off of that ward and sexually assaulted me on video. I reported it to the police. That officer did not send it over to SVU. They sent it to Penn, who then had somebody call and threaten me. So I went to CPOC and asked them to help. I waited 1.5 years and heard nothing. Nothing was done. I started doing a little pushback. Once I started doing pushback is when I was threatened with police, arrest, all sorts of bad things. So then I said, who do I talk to about this? And I found out there were commissioners, not through anybody on the staff who I had emailed and asked, but through my own research. Nobody on the commission has told me they take my side. I think they did the right thing. It went to the Office of the Inspector General. There were some issues. I had been blocked from Facebook. I had been blocked from anything. And all I did was ask questions. And I'm sorry that they're upset that I asked questions. And I'm sorry that they're upset that I pushed back. But I thought the only agency out there that was going to help me get any justice for being sexually assaulted while under anesthesia would have been CPOC. I have never met face to face most of these people. And I've only had short conversations with a few of them on the commission and a few of them on staff, longer conversations that have, yes, gotten quite heated. But if you can't understand how upsetting it is to know that there is a rapist in that hospital who are taking women and doing horrible things to them, and nobody cares, maybe you should think just for a second why I'm so upset. And then to have them send out horrid emails about vile things, I find it just unprofessional and disheartening and heartbreaking. So I'm not the bad guy. I'm just a person who was trying to get justice and to make sure that other women were not being subjugated to such abhorrent behavior. That officer doxed me.
If you can hear me, we can't hear you. Sam, ma'am, we can't hear you.
And blocked me. So that's where we are. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. And Danny, I'm sorry. Any other hands raised?
Hans was raised again. I don't know if we wanted to allow second questions. I don't see any other hands raised currently.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll make it brief. Thank you for allowing for a second question.
I'll limit you to 1.5 minutes now. No,
I'll take 30 seconds. First one is just quickly, there's accusations there was like a never Anthony or an effort to never hire Anthony Rachi as executive director. I'm wondering if there's any truth to that and what we're supposed to take away from the idea that he's the only candidate really left at this point. He's not being considered. Second one is I'm hearing a suggestion that everyone's gotten all wrong. The staff were treated well. There was no overstepping by the board. There was no abuse of staff. I'm wondering if, for the sake of transparency, if the board, the oversight board that's in charge of transparency for another large department, will commit to transparency of its own and offer an investigation and review of the actions of board members so folks be put at ease about what has happened here. That's my two questions. I think that was under 30 seconds.
I actually think that's a great idea based on the gravity of those allegations. And I would invite the Inspector General to do whatever they deem appropriate. Honestly, I will turn over my emails gladly as it relates to that. I'm blanking on the first portion. What was the first part?
It was just a response to whether or not there is a campaign to avoid hiring Anthony Rachi, and if we should take anything away from the idea that he's the only candidate that I understand is left at this point, and he's not being offered the position.
Right, and I'm not quite sure where that notion comes from in terms of which candidates, right? Because I didn't.
I'm sorry, that's a
disclose
press coverage. You're right.
Right.
That came from press, just to be clear.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm not sure where that notion is coming from. And as we sit right here, I'm still not in a position where I'm going to disclose any names or anything like that, just based on, again, the process being called into question. And based on my conversations with all of the commissions and the nature of the allegations and the gravity of our process, is so much being called into question, including by one of the individuals that have since resigned, who was a part of the process every step of the way, then let's just do away with the process. Anthony will remain the interim executive director. And that's another thing that I would point out, and I hope I can humor you for a moment, Mr. Menos. We live in a society where people are quick to pull up receipts, right? And if there was this campaign against Anthony Arachi as the executive director, and if there was these allegations of bullying, if all of this occurred, then I'm sure, or I would think and hope, that individuals would come forward with their receipts. There was no campaign. As far as I'm concerned, I did not know Anthony Arachi prior to starting with the Citizens Police Oversight Commission. I feel like we work well together. We have a very professional relationship. We correspond almost routinely. So I'm not quite sure where the notion came from that there was a campaign against Mr. Arachi, as opposed that there may have been a notion that there was a campaign that no one else but Mr. Arachi. I'm not sure if there are any other questions or hands raised at this point. I see Angelica Hendricks with the hands raised.
Yeah, and Eric Thomas has a second. Why don't we do Angelica first and then Eric Thomas? Angelica, if you want to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thanks for having this meeting. My question is, as you all are reconvening the next iteration of the search for the ED, could you explain, elaborate, what role will the staff have in collaborating with that search? I'm engaged in other boards that also do ED searches, and we similarly look at what the staff has to say to help us in deciding the permanent ED. So will the commissioners ask the staff for their input on the ED search?
Thank you, Angelica. We haven't gotten to that point yet. If that's something that is warranted, we will, as a commission, will come together and think about that. The only thing that I will say is the thought process going into this was this situation. I think that it was a little bit unique with one of the actual applicants or candidates was the actual interim. So to a certain extent, the rubric, the guidelines, the metrics were built and based off an individual who had inherited the position. And the idea of not having the staff involved early on was so as that no individuals, because again, I didn't know Anthony prior to working with him here, was so that no individuals were tainted. For instance, when the applications first came out, the commissioners did not have total autonomy with the applications. So individuals were leaving feedback on them, and we just did not want to be tainted by any feedback for or against anyone. So, I mean, I think that's a great point. And as a commissioner, as commissioners, we need to decide, right? Because it seems like, and again, this is an organization. It's not about me. It's about the community. Because with or without me, this organization goes on, and it's about what the community wants and needs in order for the organization to thrive. So if that's something that the community thinks is appropriate, or if that's something where maybe we can talk to someone like yourself, Angelica, and get some pointers as we move forward with this, and we're guided in that direction, I am willing to do whatever it takes.
Sure, I'm here. I'm always available. You all have my cell phone number, my email, and I also want to share with Samantha Williams. She's on a flight right now, but she's also available, and we're always here to help you all, find a path forward.
I see Mr. Thomas's hand again.
Yep. Eric, if you want to unmute yourself again.
Yes, sorry. Thank you for recognizing me again. I just have, I was just curious, and this sort of relates, sorry, to the last question, but I was just wondering, like, since the search was being thrown out as of this meeting, based on, I guess, what the letter said, how will this process be different going forward, and how is the committee set up to ensure that the way the process is being redesigned is more successful? Thank you.
So one of the things that automatically jump out to me is that I think that we need to have collective voices in this search as we move forward. Because again, one of the claims or the allegations is that there was a group or there was a faction that wanted to do this, that, and the other. So I think instead of maybe just having one group who brings something to the commissioners to ratify, we have to have everyone involved in this so that the remaining commissioners don't feel isolated, they don't feel left out, and whatever decision is made, it's made as a group. The other thing is I think we've seen some of our flaws, right? We're not perfect. We have not been perfect in this search, but the benefit of it is that now moving forward, we see the roadblocks, we see the speed bumps, and we can navigate them a little bit better because we've been down this road before. So one of the things initially that's going to change or speed up the process, in fact, even is that, and I don't know, we haven't gotten to the point yet, but we've already developed questions. We've already developed rubric. We already know about what it takes to get a position posted. We already know what it takes to get a PER, I think is position, personal employment requisition, or something like that. We already know those things and can speed through and fast track those things. So that is going to be helpful in terms of a second time around. But honestly, and even also now with feedback in terms of staff being involved, right? That's helpful to go forward now. And also knowing that other individuals since this, I think that the one good thing that has come out of this is the fact that our allies throughout the city, the managing director's office, the law department, they have come and voiced their support of this commission to go forward and to make sure that this commission is successful. And so we will rely on them to the extent that they are available and to the extent that we need in terms of procedurally and process-wise. I think that we have 2 minutes left. If there are there any hands or Danny, I don't know if you see any questions that, in your mind. Angelica's hand is back up.
Sorry for another question, but I did see in the legislation that I believe you all's first report is coming due in the next couple of months to the mayor and city council on what you've been doing for the first year. So I was just wondering if you could give like maybe like a brief summary of what the report was going to detail.
All right, one moment. I'm sorry. The annual report is ready, but if I may, just waiting for this document to load. Okay, some of the things that have been done and worked on, police complaint mediation program implemented July 22nd, reinstated July of 2022, reinstated in April of 2023. Grant program for evaluation, police complaint mediation program. Again, that's something that's going to be an emphasis as we move forward. Police of Force Review Board. Building on the inroads and access to be able to provide comments for PBIs and sit in on PBIs, organized trainings, trauma responder trainings. Again, having gone to Las Vegas, there's a wealth of things just to kind of like rattle off because if you can imagine over the past 24 hours, I've had to give updates on things of that nature. So that's just a glimpse of what the thing. I hope that answers that question. But the report will certainly speak for itself and be very impressive. And we hope that everyone is appreciative of the work that has been put into it. It is 7 o'clock. Danny, since you are, I'll call it the MC, master of the chat. If you just, if there's any question that pops out that's like, we shouldn't get off of this meeting without maybe addressing that, just shoot it out.
Me, if I could go real quick.
Please.
Okay, so the budget committee met May 27, 2023. And as Commissioner Hakeem stated, we got together and pointed out specifics about the budget that we would like to address. The community outreach committee. Okay, hold on. Let me rewind. The budget consists of Commissioner Hakeem, Commissioner Du Bois, and myself. The community outreach committee, which consists of ex-commissioner or former commissioner Mary Ellis, Commissioner Rosario, Commissioner Solomon, and myself. We met on May 26th to discuss the commission's views of community outreach and develop a plan on moving forward as a commission.
Thank you, Hassan. I just saw this really quickly, Isaac. The interviews were recorded. There were not any interviews that failed to record or were not taped for any reason. I'm not sure where that came from. All of them were recorded. Part of the reason of why they were recorded because I was not able to be in person when the interviews occurred, but in order, since I was part of it, to be able to make an informed decision, when we came together, I reviewed every single recorded interview. That answers your question. I don't know if this is a new hand for Citizen One or not. If it is a new hand, we'll take that new hand and then we will close the meeting out I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Citizen One, do you have a new comment or question?
Yes, I'm just a little concerned that there is somebody on here that is using my image and my name and impersonating me in this meeting. I don't think that that is ethical.
All right, thank you for that, Citizen One. To the extent that we can, I don't think we can control the name signatures that individuals provide or whatever photographs that they use. Danny, I'm sorry, before we close it out, I just wanted to loop back because I know I asked if there's any burning question that anyone thought would be that you think would be appropriate to touch base on before we end for the evening.
No, I don't think there was any big questions that I saw in the chat. I did just put in, and I'll share it again. If you're not already a part of our mailing list, please definitely sign up. The link is right there. Our next meeting is, I believe, scheduled for June 6th, next Tuesday, if that is correct, Jolly.
Yes, that next Tuesday. Oh goodness, already. No, that is correct. Any commissioners have any parting words? All right, thank you so much.
I'm always talking, Chairman Jolly, and all I know that when I was sworn in to become one of the 9 commissioners is to help to work with our communities. Not just my district, but all districts within the city of Philadelphia, and to somehow be able to work with the police department. As I said in many of my interviews since the 24 hours, this is sad. This is something that is sad. And the accusations are sad. But I am going to continue to do everything in my power. As I said before, I am not Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, Cesar Chavez, but I do have an agenda to help my communities and to do everything in my power as one of the commissioners to move forward to help our communities. So with that, this is how I feel. This is how I feel. Many may want to still question us, but that's fine. That's why we're here. That's why we're here. And I want to thank you, Chairman Jolly. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.